So noting that it's 7 o'clock on September 6, 2023, I'll call the Board of Health meeting to order. We have 3 variance hearings, some other appointments. In a moment, we'll review whether to update the agenda with things not anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. And then, but before we do that, as a virtual meeting, we just need to indicate that we're here by sort of a roll call. So Daryl Beardsley present.
Matt Beavers present.
Julie Dreyfus present.
Diana Hook present.
Rebecca Honeywell present.
Okay, so I'll do the items to be added. We have one for 212 Farm Road. There's a septic replacement plan for potential approval. And does anyone have anything else? Let's come up. It's an emergency. Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to add this to the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none.
Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
And Daryl Beardsley, aye. All right, so the co-chair is going to take over.
Sounds good. So I think, did I see Tom was here? Yes, food inspector. Great. So let's go ahead and start with the Heritage Sherborn since Tom is here with us. I will pull up the engineering report if I can find it.
And I also believe I saw Jonathan log on just a moment ago.
Yes, right here.
Yep.
Thank you.
There he is.
Great.
All right, so
Oh, sorry, wrong person. I was jumping ahead to the. Go ahead.
We'll
Sorry.
start with this. So Tom, any comments here?
I had the opportunity to speak with Daryl briefly before the meeting, but we do have some questions about this is kind of a sparse on details. I know that Josh, during his past appearance at the meeting, had mentioned that they think they rectified the root cause of some of the moisture with that condensation drain in the walk-in cooler. But having read these in the past, I was just kind of a little surprised that it didn't have any explicitly mentioned like root causes, long-term prevention, in addition to the causative factors. I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but I was kind of expecting a little bit more as far as details go. And I know it does mention the freezer and the walk-in cooler, but even the basement in general. There is a dry storage area opposite the walk-in coolers, so just the viability and the safety of storing foods in the basement in general. Is there groundwater entry? I have no idea, but is it strictly secluded just to condensation? I don't know. So those are my thoughts on that.
I had similar in that the technical details in terms of what exactly was considered in their environmental inspection and what were the findings and the analyses, observations. There really wasn't too much in here other than cleaning had been performed. And I guess I felt that it was apparent from the past food inspection reports, multiple past inspections, and from our discussions that the mold issues there, right? The disposal of the butter with mold, the noting that the walls had been cleaned in the refrigerator had been cleaned of mold, but not the ceiling, and that was still a hazard. And so the cleaning is a good step. But remediating mold means finding out what the source of the moisture is and addressing that. Otherwise, it's going to keep coming back. So you do need to clean it to get rid of it, but then you have to stop the problem from recurring. And that's pretty standard in the mold remediation world as an approach. And so that's why I was surprised not to see that addressed here. But I don't know what information, what directive they had, like what were they looking for? Was it merely cleanliness? So I would like to ask them to address that specifically, because again, maybe that was wrong of me to assume that they understood that. And that's where I stand.
I tend to agree. This seemed pretty superficial. I think it meets the letter of what we requested, and nothing more. I would be in favor of sort of asking for more detail to be presented at the next meeting, when they're supposed to also present us with the remediation with the mold in the attic space.
Mm-hmm. And I could even see, I'd be happy to say, sorry, we were not explicit the first time. Again, just based on what the prior issues have been, I thought mold was obvious. But I guess it wasn't obvious, and truly we didn't say eliminate the mold problem. So maybe we have to word something a little more in that direction, like exactly what we want them to do. Is
Or
there
even
a
just, I mean, it
condition?
says sort of vaguely repairs were made to the refrigeration system, like details on that would be good.
Right. What kind of repairs? And yeah.
There
And
was
does that mean that it is preventing moisture from accumulating inside the refrigeration system, which then exposes the food stored there to it? I mean, so we do need some maybe different wording that's very clear that the mold is the issue, because it's also an issue for the workers, not just for people who are coming to eat at the Heritage.
Julie, did you have something to add?
And I wanted to make sure that I understood this correctly, and I guess maybe this was Tom. Tom, the moisture issue was not just in the refrigeration, it was in the entirety of the basement area?
So there's an area that's out to the left of the walk-in cooler, and over in that area there's a washer and dryer there. They do their own laundry for linens. There was some water situated in that back corner between, I think, a clothes washer and the walk-in cooler. I'm not sure if the washer overflowed, but or if was it the condensation leaking from the condenser in the cooler. And it was explained to me at the time, I believe they said that the wash machine had leaked, or it could be a combination of both. They really weren't definitively sure. So I just want to make sure that it's not groundwater. What is it? Has that issue been eliminated? Is the moisture in the basement in general being taken care of, rather than just secluded to the inside of the walk-in cooler and the condensation drain? It could be more of an issue.
Okay, so inside the cooler and in the entirety of the basement. And it doesn't look like any part of this report addresses those in any detail, particularly the moisture outside of the cooler.
Correct, yeah.
Right. And I
I'm
think
just looking back at the minutes from the last meeting for what we exactly asked for. And it basically just says we want an assessment by an environmental engineer to assess the viability and safety of storing and keeping food in the basement. And this assessment denoting the scope of the necessary remediation. And so I feel like it's the scope of the remediation that's missing from this letter.
Mm-hmm.
okay, so I like your point, Julie, too, about maybe, and Tom, it's not just the refrigeration unit, it could be the basement in general. And I think you've mentioned, Tom, that the refrigeration unit is not as enclosed as some are, where it's sitting on the concrete floor in the basement. And if there's any moisture coming up through there, that could be part of the issue. So anyway, so maybe talking about it as moisture conditions in the basement in general. And if it's not groundwater, or it's not the moisture coming up through the concrete into the basement space, is it improper ventilation of washing machine and dryer, improper maintenance? Something has to be identified more clearly there.
Right, and being a concrete slab, it could be even just condensation on the slab itself, just the cold air constantly blowing on that with no barrier. Usually there's like, you step up a little bit and there's like a sheet metal on top of like foam insulation. That there's like a modular components of the floors that they come in sections, and they usually are sealed. And the newer ones, it's a stainless
Mhm.
cover. There's a threshold you step up into it, so it's kind of elevated off the slab. This is literally just the basement floor inside of this cooler. So ideally, it would be a smooth, non-porous, durable surface. But it is, quite old. It certainly is capable of holding temperature, but the structural integrity of the unit, it's starting to get a little tired. The walls are starting to pit the aluminum. The floor is, like I said, concrete. So certainly a lot of crevices and cleaning issues that supposed to be a challenge for that particular cooler.
So I guess the question is, what's the right next step here? Do we ask for more detail and have it presented by the 15th for the next meeting? Is a reinspection make sense? Like, what's the sort of right action to take here?
I think I'd probably go out and conduct a follow-up visit, and take off the violations that have since been corrected, and then ask for in writing a more detailed report from this environmental engineer firm.
Including the potential moisture problems in the basement, and including the refrigeration unit and their potential, whether they're a factor in the mold that reappears.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay. I mean, I think that makes sense. Do you need a vote or some action by us to support that, or what do people feel like would be the best way to codify this?
I would authorize Tom to create after following an inspection and a meeting, to also create a letter to that effect. And I guess the question would be, is if you note something new while you're there, then maybe give him the authority to add in anything else that's outstanding. But again, this mold issue seems to be recurring, and I'd like to see that taken care of.
Okay. You want to make a motion based on that, Tara?
Would anyone like to move what I just said? Would that be a way? Ellen, did you get that enough, or do I need to come up with something more succinct?
Ellen here?
Maybe more succinct. Do we have
Tell
a
you what.
motion to authorize Tom to prepare a letter to the Heritage regarding additional information that we would like to see from, what do we want to call this person? Industrial hygienist, regarding conditions that Tom, deems important to address at the Heritage. That's to give you some latitude, Tom,
Oh,
for
thank you. I appreciate it.
new things that become apparent.
Okay, I'll move that.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
And Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right, thanks. And then pull back up our agenda. Tom, do you have comment on the Silverwood Farm topic, or should we go to Mark for that?
Sure. Just to first of all thank Mr. Hodson Walker for joining us tonight. And overall, the vendors have been very good about reaching out to us and submitting applications. There's just a few tweaks that I've encountered that I think should be addressed. One of them being access to hand washing. It seems a little convoluted with some of the vendors and what the expectations are. I certainly don't mind clarifying that to them, but that's kind of like a pinnacle access thing that needs to be in place, whether it's a portable unit. I know the onus typically should be on the permit holder, but I don't know if it would be in the better interest of Silverwood to get their hands on some sort of a portable hand sink. I've also encountered an issue earlier in the season with, I believe there was a caterer that had a pig roast, and they kind of just dropped off the pig in the roaster and just kind of left it there on its own. So just to make sure there's some oversight, particularly with some complex cooking processes such as this. So there's monitoring of temperatures and you know, food safety and food protection concerns with the person in charge requirement that's explicitly stated in the food code. So just making sure that vendors and caterers aren't just, you know, dropping things off without oversight. Which any concern that I brought up, we've managed to work together on. I feel like with Miss Rainey, who is the on-site contact there at Silverwood, and I've also wanted to address the applications. We just want to make sure that the DBA listed in the applications that we're in receipt of is reflective of the vendor. We've been getting some pre-populated applications in with Silverwood Farmers, the doing business as at the top. We want to make sure that they can certainly note that that's where the location of the event is, but we want to make sure that the name of the business is listed at the top of that report. And then obviously we have the porta potties in place on a temporary basis. I think Mark can elaborate more on that, but and then the kitchen that's there present in the barn is off limits. It's non-commercial. It's my understanding is it's a break room for staff, and farm hands are only allowed to use the hard plumb bathrooms on site. And then also there was a couple caterers that, so that in the food code, just to clarify, a definition of a caterer is somebody who prepares and cooks food off-site at a commercial licensed kitchen. They transport it to the serving location under temperature control. And once it gets there, they present it for immediate service. And then they bring all the utensils back to their base of operations for wash, rinse, and sanitizing. What we've been encountering at Silverwood is we're having some folks come in. They're doing some pretty extensive cooking. We've had charcoal fires and pig roast there. So that's not, once you get into that territory and you're doing complex cook processes and bringing foods in and out of the danger zone, then that's not what a caterer is. Even though they call themselves a caterer, we would make them get a license as a temporary food establishment. So there's a level of oversight there. And with those particular vendors, there was some grease management concerns that I have to make sure that they're disposing of the renderings properly that are produced by these processes, and bringing the waste oil back to where they came from and disposing of it properly through a rendering service. And just to make sure that we're not introducing any grease into a failed septic system. Mark can elaborate more on that, but those are an overview of some of the things that I've encountered this season, and we definitely could afford on our end to streamline the application process just so there's clarity for what the vendors, you know, and I spoke with Ellen about this in the past. We just haven't had the time to sit down and kind of hash it out. So we have a more streamlined application so that the vendors are aware of what they explicitly need to provide to us. Copies of permits. I usually ask for a copy of their most recent health inspection in the municipality that they're licensed in, and ServSafe certificates, allergen certificates, and then we try to flag the fire department when there's use of propane or open flames. So that's kind of a synopsis of what I'm encountering there.
Okay, and then in the interest of making these processes go as smoothly as possible, something else I've noted is that some of the vendors who are going to Silverwood have misconceptions about their ability to use the facilities there. And so by the time it's getting to Tom, because a lot of folks are submitting these things pretty close to when the events are, which doesn't give them a lot of time to adjust. So they seem surprised by what Tom has to explain to them about not using the barn facilities. And so finding a way to get that information, and I think that is going to have to fall on Silverwood more to make sure that the vendors coming understand those conditions so that they can prepare for it and not feel like they're scrambling at the last minute to try to get hand wash sinks, portable hand washing sinks and the like, to meet the requirements. Because they're probably not familiar with doing a lot of work in towns that don't have a municipal sewer system. So in Eastern Massachusetts.
And I was just going to add to, I spoke to the building commissioner, and he noted that the barn itself is not to be used for any public assemblies or any public, the hired farm hands only. And that's, the kitchen is a employee kitchen for the hired hands, the farm hands, as well as the bathrooms are only for the hired farm hands. So, so both the building commissioner and I both don't have the requirements completed yet to have an active system, septic system. Right now, the septic tank for the barn goes to the household septic system on Pleasant Street. So that's only for the hired hands and the residents on Pleasant Street, the owner, Mr. Hodson Walker. It's his house. They have tested land behind Mr. Hodson Walker's house, and we are still awaiting septic plans so that they can have their own separate septic system. And grease management will be another issue where they'll have to add a grease tank outside. So that's some of the discussion that has occurred in the past month or so, and I've been in discussion with Tom on these items as well.
Mr. Hodson Walker, do you have any comment or question?
That's a long list there, but thank you for all those comments. We do appreciate it. So I think sort of running down the list on the hand washing front, we're very aware of that. I think our intention is to get some hand washing stations so that we can be compliant with that requirement. Frankly, we are still sort of learning the operation of the site with different vendors and different people coming through. We've tried to do the best we can in modifying or pre-filling the town's food permit for vendors to use. We'd certainly be open to any suggestions from the board in how to properly set that up so people can fill it out and be understanding of what they need to do from the compliance perspective. In listening through the discussion now, I think it actually will be helpful, and we welcome the guidance of putting together some sort of checklist that we can give to people so they understand exactly what is required in the town of Sherborn, which is, as you correctly said, a little unusual in some regards, versus towns that have got their own septics and water supply or sewage systems and water supply. So we welcome that input, and maybe that's a great to-do item coming out of the call here. Our understanding of people that are bringing there are a variety of different food products that come to the site. You mentioned the pig roast. There've been food trucks. There've been people who bring in conventional food from offsite, from licensed kitchens. I think our understanding is that the people who have, for example, the pig roast people, our understanding was they have the permits they need to do their pig roast, and they would coordinate with the town to make sure that you're comfortable with whatever they have. That's our principal objective, is make sure that whoever shows up on site is coordinated with Tom. They understand what they need to do, and they're fully compliant. We have absolutely zero interest in bringing people on site that are not fully compliant with whatever the Board of Health needs from us, from the business perspective and the safety perspective. The vendors you mentioned, Daryl, that have got some misconceptions, we take pains in the contract we sign with people to spell out what they can and can't do with respect to the barn. So we're very definitive with people around the requirements there. We'll endeavor to reiterate that to all the people that come on site. Again, we have no interest in people using the barn. We're very clear about it. Our on-site manager, Laura Rainey, who Tom mentioned, is very focused on keeping people out of the building So we're very diligent about that aspect of our requirements. I note the comments about the septic system. This is we had a sort of a soft launch last year. This has been more of getting a better understanding of the process of operating an event facility this year. I think we're trying to figure out what we need from the septic perspective. We acknowledge Mark's comments that we've got land sort of perked for a system out behind the house here. Once we've figured out what is optimal from the business point of view, we're going to move forward with the design. Obviously, we'll submit those details and bring them forward. But for right now, our focus is using the temporary toilets and hand washing facilities until we've figured out that aspect of it. But that's a to be determined item for us from the business perspective. But we do understand the circumstances. We do understand the limitations on the building, and we're very forthright with people about making sure that users of the facility are aware of those limitations.
I might
Okay,
add, it's also important to note that we need hand washing access outside of the porta potties. I know there's hand sanitizer inside of them, but is there hand wash sinks inside of those porta potties, or?
I believe.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, Lisa,
There
I think
is.
one does have a sink in.
Oh.
Tom checked that actually when he did the inspection earlier this year.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, there is hand washing inside the two premium ones. There is. The only one there is not is in the ADA one because it doesn't come with it.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
And so with regards to we're finding a couple things too that I just wanted to mention is with regards to the timing, and I do apologize because we're having the same issue in that, we're getting these food permits, approval for food permits very late in the process. And we're scrambling as well, saying your event is, in a couple of weeks and you have yet to get us the food permit, which we've asked for. We have like a requirement in our contract for them to have the food permit to us much earlier than, days before the event. And they've signed the contract. And we're finding two things that are an issue. One is a lot of times when they've signed the contract with us to have their wedding at our barn, it's a year in advance, and they don't even have their caterer lined up. By the time they get their caterer lined up, we're learning that there's this disconnect, that everything that we've talked to them about and everything that's in the contract for them to do then has not been communicated to the caterer. And so, they think everything's fine, and we're waiting for, them to get the food permit or to go to the Board of Health. And so one of the things that we're starting to do now is to also then have, once the caterer's lined up, them sign a contract with the checklist saying you need to get to the Board of Health by this date and get us the food permit. The second issue that we're running into is that a lot of the caterers are saying we have a food permit, and we're like, great, you've already gone to the Board of Health. Yeah, we have a food permit. We have a food permit, and we're like, that's fantastic. Then they get us the food permit and it's Town of Framingham, or it's the state of Massachusetts food permit, and they're saying, well, that's fine every venue that we've gone to before that. And the caterers don't understand. They said that very rarely, if ever, have they been asked for a specific food permit from that specific town. And so that's what we've run in as well, is that we're told they have a food permit when in fact they do not have a Town of Sherborn food permit. So those are the two issues that we've come across, and we're trying, now that we know those issues, we're addressing those. So hopefully, the measures we're putting in place to address those will be, won't be an issue anymore.
I can empathize with those challenges. And just to clarify, a caterer, if they have a catering license from another community, and they're meeting what the definition of a caterer is, they're cooking food offsite, they're bringing it to Silverwood, they're presenting it for immediate service, then I have no issue with that. They're required in the code to give us a 72-hour notice, a copy of the menu. I usually ask for a copy of their permit, and there's food safety certificates, and they're good to go. But the issue is we're running into people who are presenting themselves, oh, I'm a caterer, I have a catering license, but they're doing a pig roast. They're doing open charcoal fires, they're doing complex cooking processes. Well, that's not a caterer. I mean, I know they're a caterer, but in the code that's you need a permit as a temporary food establishment. So there's some oversight as far as that goes. So with that, we require a 30-day notice. And I'm encouraged to learn that you're working with and trying to insert that verbiage in your contracts to make sure that folks are aware that they're not scrambling. You know, many of us plan weddings, including myself, so it can be stressful. So we don't want to add to that. We want to work with people for sure, but you know, we're a small community. We don't have the resources to be chasing people for the things that we need. So that's why we require that 30-day notice.
I'm right there with you. Because we're stressed as well. That's the last thing we want to. So we'd be happy to, and actually, as Jonathan mentioned, I'd be happy to meet with whoever I need to meet with to come up with the exact checklist or the exact verbiage that I need to say to make sure that it's, in compliance with everything that it needs to be. Because we have what we think is correct, but I would love for you to double check it and make sure it's fine.
Yeah, and even if someone says that they're a caterer, it probably is a good idea just to give us a 30-day heads up and be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is my menu. And I can say, okay, you're a caterer, you're good to go. You don't need a permit. Or, well, that's a little bit more in depth. You're probably gonna need to pull a permit with us, and then we can work with them from that point on. And then 30 days should be ample enough time to get everything vetted out.
Yeah. And we're not event planners or, wedding planners or wedding coordinators. We're just like Laura Rainey is the venue manager. And so it's, a lot of times we're doing our best to try to interject in the process to get that information and make sure that it's, getting to you. And so, but we actually just had a meeting today again on it just to figure out, the processes and how to make sure it happens much earlier than it's been happening and how to make sure, we get make sure that the information actually is getting to the caterers what they need to get, as opposed to just the wedding couple.
If I may.
It's actually helpful to know that I didn't really appreciate that the wedding couple was in between you and the caterers or the food service folks. So that explains some of the confusion, because I recall you sharing with us a document that itemized a lot of the things that we've been talking about. So so that
and
is good to know.
It's about and we're finding too that a lot of the wedding couples are just a disaster. They're just not, they don't have event planners or wedding. In fact, I've now added into our kind of initial information document is that we highly recommend they get an event planner, because they're very difficult the wedding couples are very difficult to talk to as well, because they're, I think they've got a lot of other things that they're worrying about. So, because a lot of this we have in our contract, it needs to be done by 90 days in advance. And so we're obviously not getting that. We're down to, the last week. So.
Mark, it looks like Mark, you're on mute. It looks like Mark had something to add, and I think we need to be aware we're late for our variance hearing. So
that's all I was going to say, is just to note that the variance hearing's on the way.
So it sounds like the useful action item here. It sounds like some of this is sort of streamlining your processes, particularly when you're having to deal with effectively a different organizer for each event or a different, wedding couple. Mm-hmm. And then some of it may be a simplified checklist, which maybe you can work offline with Mark and Tom to.
That'd be great. Yeah,
construct.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Much appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so as it is 7:34, we're 4 minutes late for the 7:30 variance hearing for 239 Western Avenue. Ellen, do we have the green cards?
Yes, we do. I know I'm not Ellen. Oh, go ahead, Ellen. She informed me that we had all the green cards for all the variance hearings.
Right.
Yes, this is for 263 Western Ave.
Yep, 263 Western. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and open that hearing? Is Eric here?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. All right, so hearing is open. Eric, I'll pull up the plans and you can go ahead and tell us what's going on here.
Okay, great. Okay, so my name is Eric Dickinson. I'm with Civilized Solutions. I'm here with the Luskins. I can see them both there, Eric and Teresa. Their property is 263 Western Avenue. To be more exact, it's located at the end of Brook Street, where if you're coming out of Holliston, where Brook hits Western, you can go left or right. Their house is straight ahead. It's a. I was just gonna. Can you scroll down a tiny bit? Yeah.
No, I
Okay.
was trying to show the locus.
Oh
but
yeah, perfect.
Now I'll move back over.
Okay. So it's a small lot. As you can see, it's 25,000 square feet. It's a 3-bedroom single family house built in 1970. The existing leach field is in the front yard, also proposed, also probably built in 1970. So it's 53 years old. There's a in-ground pool in the backyard, and their on-site well is behind the pool. I should note this was a voluntary Title V. They're planning on doing an addition on the southern side of the garage. It's not a bedroom. They're not adding a bedroom. They're just doing it for they both retired, and it's for family. It's just living space. Having a little bit of experience in the area, and after walking the site, I noticed there was a lot of ledge. There's some outcrop, as you can see, over on the northern side of the property, near the proposed soil absorption system. So I should mention that, keeping in mind the two sensitive points of this property are the abutters well across the street, and as well as the homeowners well, their own well. So I decided to do my testing, as you can see where all my test pits are on the northern side of the property. As guessed, I encountered ledge at about, I can go through the different logs, but there was 30 inches, 52 inches, 30 inches, 48 inches. So it was very, very shallow ledge throughout the property. We decided to do a test pit on the other side to see if we could find anything better. As you can see, there's a paved looped driveway right in there. We encountered ledge as well. So keeping in mind the two sensitive points, as I mentioned before, the abutters well, as well as their well, I decided to stay outside of the buffer of the abutter across the street and designed an IA system, a fast geoflow. There will be no reduction to groundwater. I'm going to hold at 4 feet. This is the state regulation. It's got advanced treatment. There are several variances associated with putting the system in that area and these systems in general. It's about the lowest profile. So it won't be much of a mound there, because I didn't want to push any water towards their house. But if you'd like, I can go through the different variances now.
Sure. Before I pull this down, does anyone on the board have a question about the plans as shown here?
I think I'm seeing the usual challenge of, once you have the protective radius from the wells, you're left with a little sliver of land on the left side of the screen and the right side of the screen.
Exactly.
And neither one had incredible conditions.
No.
So, and Mark, do you agree that where it's being cited is a reasonable spot, given the constraints on this property?
Yes, based on the fact that, one, you have already features on the property such as the pool, which would have taken up the soils that are needed. This is probably the only place that will be within, the requirements for the other wells, within the state requirements. I think this was a difficult site, and the designer has done his job in finding the best location.
I also appreciate you preserving the distance from the neighbors well.
Yes, thank you.
No other comments. I'll pull up the variance letter. And if you want to walk us through these, or
Yeah, I can.
summarize, and then we'll obviously go one by one as we vote.
Okay. The first one is from the Sherborn Rules and Regulations. It's section 1.2. It's to allow the use of this is a little bit different than the one. No, to allow the use of a bed to design to provide 100% of the required SAS the microfast system, which is the IA system, treatment with the geoflow drip, which are beds by design, provide advanced treatment, which improves effluent quality. The second variance is section 5.1C to allow reduction in the minimum depth of 5 feet or the minimum depth of 5 test pits due to refusal. 6 total test pits were dug throughout the property and the maximum elevation obtained before refusal was 54 inches. The third Sherborn rules and regulations is variance is section 8.01 to allow the proposed soil absorption system to be designed 4 feet above seasonal high groundwater, which is the state regulation, rather than the required 5 feet. The FAST system's advanced treatment compensates for this variance. The fourth, section 8.02, to allow the proposed soil absorption system to be located in an area where maximum high groundwater is less than 5 feet below the natural surface grade. As I said, I maintained the 4-foot separation, and I think the highest groundwater we had was 20 inches. We saw redox at 20 inches, but anyway, so section 8.02 again, to allow the proposed soil absorption system to be located 4.7 feet from ledge rather than the required 6 feet. All the areas throughout this property that we tested yielded shallow ledge or refusal. Section 10.1B(c) to allow the leaching area to be located 79.6 feet from the on-site downhill well versus the 150 feet required due to site constraints. Number 7, section 10.2 to allow the soil absorption system to be located 10 feet versus 20 feet from the required property line due to a limited area outside the well buffer. And then we get into the local upgrade approval, the Title V variances, section 15.4051B to allow the proposed soil absorption system to be located 6.3 feet versus 20 feet from the cellar wall. The IA system, the geoflow drip dispersal, has been approved by the DEP to be located as close to 5 feet from a cellar wall. There's no breakout in this type of with this type of soil absorption system. Section 15.4051J to allow the proposed soil absorption system to be located 79.6 feet from the on-site well versus 100 feet to protect the down gradient neighbor's well. Like I said, I mentioned there's no increase in flow. They're just maintaining it as a 3-bedroom. There's no reduction in the separation to groundwater, and we're using an IA system, which has advanced treatment. Section 15.4051K to allow 1 deep hole in the proposed disposal area where it has been determined by the approving authority that the deep hole adequately characterizes the soil for the purpose of designing the soil absorption system. Due to the site constraints such as proximity to the dwelling, shallow ledge outcrop, and setbacks, additional test holes would not have supported a different outcome. And that's all the variances.
That feels like enough.
It's a mouthful.
Any questions for anyone on the board about any of these?
I just have one comment about the FAST treatment, advanced treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's good for nitrogen reduction, but is there anything else that it's addressing in particular? I mean, that's an important one, but it's not the only one. I think often, I just want to make sure that, especially if there are any abutters on who have any questions. A lot of the things you've done here, you have maintained the 4 feet.
Yeah.
And other things are good, but that doesn't mean it's treated
right,
across all possible contaminants.
Like pathogens, right.
Right. Yeah. It's specialized or metals or chlorinators or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And are there any abutters who have any questions?
I was gonna go there next after we saw if any from the board had.
Oh, okay.
I don't have further comments. Anyone else from the board have comments, and then we can go to abutters.
I don't.
Okay, I'm seeing shaking heads. Okay, are there any butters present? All right, not hearing any. We can probably go through and vote on these if that seems reasonable. All right, so I'll run through them. So do I have a motion to approve variance to section 1.2, allowing the use of a bed design to provide 100% of the required SAS?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right. Do I have an motion to approve a variance to section 5.1C to allow reduction in the minimum depth of 5 test pits due to refusal?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
Right, do I have a motion to approve a variance to section 8.0 subsection 1 to allow the proposed SAS to be designed 4 feet above seasonal high groundwater rather than 5 feet, which is enabled by the use of the FAST system?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, do I have a motion to approve a variance to section 8.02 to allow the proposed SAS to be in an area where the maximum high groundwater was less than 5 feet below natural surface grade?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, so do I have another motion for a variance to section 8.02 to allow the proposed SAS to be located 4.7 feet from ledge rather than 6 feet?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
Do I have a motion to approve a variance to section 10.1 subparts B and C to allow the leaching area to be located 79.6 feet from the on-site downhill well versus the 150 feet required due to site constraints?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
Do I have a motion to approve a variance to section 10.2 to allow the SAS to be located 10 feet versus 20 feet from property line due to the limited area outside the well buffer?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, so moving on to the local upgrade approvals, do I have a motion to approve the upgrade to section 15.4051B to allow the SAS to be located 6.3 versus 20 feet from the cellar wall, which is also enabled by the system being installed?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
I have a motion to approve the local upgrade to section 15.4051J to allow the SAS to be located 79.6 feet from the on-site well versus 100 feet to protect the neighbor's well.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
Then finally, do I have a motion to approve the local upgrade for section 15.4051K to allow 1 deep hole in the proposed disposal area because this adequately characterized the soil?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, I.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, so with that, we can close the variance hearing. Mark, are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, they are conditional to 2 deed recordings. One for the garbage grinder prohibition, and the second one will be for the use of the innovative alternative technologies. Technology.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve the plans with those two conditions?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right,
Thank you.
almost made it by 7:50.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, Eric.
Yep, thank you. Bye now.
All right, so next up, we have a variance hearing for 73 Washington Street, Shannon and Joseph Gustafson. My understanding is we have all the green cards, and Ellen said we have all the green cards for all the variances.
Right.
Great, so we will go ahead and open up the hearing. I'll pull up the plans. Is Dan
Yes,
in here?
Dan McIntyre representing Shannon and Joe Gustafson.
All right, take it away.
Sure, and this is a house that was constructed in the 1950s. To orient you, Washington Street is up at the top of the plan. It's about a 2-acre lot. Down at the bottom of the plan, at the rear of the lot is a pond. And then there's a significant amount of wetlands on the property as well, related to a intermittent stream located on the adjacent land. So there's a few constraints we need to work with. The well is in the front yard between the house and Washington Street, and the existing cesspool is behind the home. You may notice that there's quite an extensive driveway network cutting through the middle of this lot. This driveway also serves as a common drive to the abutting property at 75 Washington Street, and also is an access point for the fire department to pump out of the pond for fire protection. There's a well point there, or not a well point, but a pumping point for them to pump out of the pond. So they use this driveway as well. Our original testing was behind the house near the cesspool, and we were disappointed with the results of that testing. It was a very poor soil, blocky, silty sand, and an extremely high groundwater table where we couldn't do any percolation tests. So we moved closer to Washington Street and found some much better soils in that area. So we decided to put the system up there. We are proposing to use an alternative technology system, the Geomat system, in a bed configuration using pressure distribution. The tanks will be behind the house in order to connect to the existing plumbing, and will pump across the side to this new bed. We are staying the minimum 50 feet away from wetlands per the Wetland Protection Act and Title V. They've deemed that 50 foot as protective of wetlands. And we have gone to the Conservation Commission and gotten approval of this design. With respect to the wells, there are 2 wells that are close to this area. The on-site well is right in the front yard, as I mentioned. We're staying 109 feet away from that, which meets Title V, but not the Sherborn regulation. And we're staying 122 feet away from the well across the street at that property, which they have a well right in the front yard next to the road. So we're just shy of the Sherborn requirement for that. But we do meet Title V. I think the important aspect of this location is that we're maximizing the distance to the open water pond. And in Sherborn, it's difficult to determine groundwater flow direction in general. But at this location, I'm pretty confident that the groundwater flow is toward the back of the lot to the wetlands and the pond. So the effluent plume would be going in that direction and not in the direction of the neighbor's well or even the on-site well. in order to make this all work, we are asking for a few waivers from the Sherborn regulations and 2 waivers from the Title V local upgrade waivers. Most of them related to groundwater and wetlands. Under the Sherborn regs, we're looking for, a leaching bed, which I think you recognize this in your regulations, and I'm not sure whether we should ask for this or not, because we are using an IA system with pressure dosing or pressure distribution, so. But out of an abundance of caution, we asked for it. We're also asking for a waiver to the 3 test pits in the area of the system. We provided 2. We did do 4 overall, but only 2 are in the location of the system. It's a relatively small system, so another test pit would have just disturbed more of the natural material. And the 2 test pits we did have were very consistent. Same with the percolation tests. We did 1 percolation test, but the soil is very consistent throughout the entire area. And it was less than 2 minutes per inch. The next waiver is the offset to groundwater. Sherborn requires 5 feet. We're requesting a 3 foot for Title V using an IA technology. Because of the fast percolation rate, Title V offset is also 5 feet in this location. And then section 8.02 is relative to the natural groundwater. It is within 5 feet of the surface. We're asking for a waiver on that. And now we've got distance to the wells. As I mentioned, the on-site well is 109 feet, and the abutting well is 122 feet. These are both upgrading wells, so in this perk rate, we would need 150 feet to meet the Sherborn regulations, which we can't do. Property line offset, Sherborn requires 20 feet. We're asking for 17 feet. And the wetland offset of 125 feet. There's a typo there. We're actually asking for 50 feet on this one. I'm not sure where the 102 feet came through, but we're asking for a 50-foot offset to wetlands on this design. And then the local upgrade waivers are also related to groundwater. We're asking for a 2-foot reduction in the groundwater offset. And we're asking for the tanks to be deeper into the groundwater because of the high groundwater and the plumbing that can't be changed in the house.
And if I can add, one, Dan, you do have 52 feet on the septic plan, so it is noted there. You can just correct the letter down the road for the file.
Sure.
The other note that Dan made is correct. This septic system is a geomat, and it requires pressure dosing. If it was a septic system that had a distribution box and it was pumped up to the distribution box, that would not be pressure distribution, but this system is. So I suggest to the board that the first waiver is not required related to the bed.
Thanks, Mark. I
And
think
the
that's
reason
the
for
path
that,
for this.
yeah, the reason for that in our regulations, we say if you pressure dose with an IA technology or you pressure dose a system, it's not required that you're allowed to use beds. Thank you. I'm sorry I interrupted.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I think that's consistent with what we've done in the past when we've seen these, is we don't need the variance. All right, questions from the board on any of this?
That was helpful, Mark. Your clarification. Thank you.
Not hearing any comment from the board?
Actually, I think on variance 8, it sounds like the plans had the correct distance from the wetlands. So when Concom reviewed it and gave their approval for this, I'm assuming they had the right number, not 102.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do we have any abutters that have questions or comments? All right, hearing none there, and then sounds like nothing else from the board. so we can move forward with voting. So for the first one here, 1.2, I think we decided we don't need a variance there, so we won't comment on that. So for number 2, can I get a motion to approve a variance to 5.1C for 3 test pits required in the area of the system and only two being provided?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, can I have a motion to approve a variance to section 5.1D, which requires 2 percolation tests and only 1 was provided here?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, can I have a motion to approve variance to section 8.01 for groundwater offset to 5 feet? They're using IA technology, so 3 feet is what's needed.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
I have a motion to approve variance to section 8.02, depth to seasonal high water less than 5 feet, which is a naturally occurring condition.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
Right. Can I have a motion to approve variance to section 10.1 AC, A and C, distance to upgrading wells to be 150 in soils with perk rates less than 3. They provided 109 to the onset well and 122 to the abutting well.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
Right, can I have a motion to approve variance to section 10.2, property line offset to be 20 feet, 17 feet is provided here, which conforms to Title V.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, where am I? Can I have a motion to approve a variance to section 10 also to 10.2, wetland offset to be 125 feet, and in this case, it's 52 feet provided, which meets Title V and which has been approved by Concom.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, so moving on to the local upgrade waivers. Can I have a motion to approve a local upgrade waiver for section 15.4051H, reducing groundwater offset by 2 feet from 5 to 3 feet?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, can I have a motion to approve a local upgrade waiver to section 15.4051J to allow for less than 12 inches between tank piping and groundwater, noting that the appropriate tanks per DEP requirements are going to be specified for this?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beavers, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, so with that, we can close the hearing. And
If I may be, Matt, before you close the hearing, I
Yep.
just wanted to comment on section, the waiver to 5.1D, the 2 percolation test.
Mhm.
1 percolation test was done where there was no fill. That was at deep hole 1. But at deep hole 2, the percolation test would have started 5.5 feet down in the ground. And that becomes a danger concern because there is fill at that deep hole. So that was the other reason why that percolation test was waived off. There was also a dangerous concern there. So I just want to make note for the records.
Thanks, Mark. So with that, I'll close the hearing, and then Mark, I'll ask you if the plans are ready for approval.
Yes, they are conditional to deed recordings, both for the garbage grinder prohibition and for the use of innovative alternative technologies.
All right, so can I have a motion to approve the plans conditional on those 2 deed recordings?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, thank you. Dan, you don't get to leave yet. We have 4 minutes.
Okay.
Is there anything we can discuss in 4 minutes? I know Farm Pond folks are coming later, so we'll wait on that.
Just so the board knows, Matt and Daryl, we have 2 people waiting, one for Southfield and the other one for 44 South Main. I don't know who showed first, but I don't think we can do those in 4 minutes, or now 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think we probably can't.
Minutes?
Minutes, yeah. Minutes sounds good. I submitted a few minor edits.
Same here.
Same here.
No, I
And
didn't.
I thought, yeah, I thought Ellen captured for a long and very detailed meeting in a lot of respects, nothing perfunctory about that meeting. She captured it really well.
There was also an exciting video to go with it that I watched for 4 hours.
Some may note that I am now in the basement of my home. This is in part due to keeping everyone awake in the upper floor of my home till 11 p.m. for the last meeting. So Ellen captured the spirit of that well. All right, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 23rd meeting?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, I.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, great. I usually like to do agenda at the end, but in 2 minutes, Ellen, could you give us a overview of what's on our agenda for the 20th?
Say I didn't print anything out. I know the heritage is on. I cannot remember if there's a variance hearing. I'll have to check.
And just so the board knows, I'll be asking that we put 13 Coursebrook on that agenda. There's been a request by the homeowner to consider a requirement of the board to be changed. So that will most likely be that agenda for 13 Coursebrook.
Okay. Yeah, so heritage was the big one. Maybe one variance, the 13 Coursebrook discussion. I think nothing else from today yet needs to move to there. I know our reg review is the following meeting. So sounds like maybe we have some space for now. See
And we might have something pending, whatever the ZBA hearing
yeah,
comes up with tonight, that that meeting that they're having right now.
right, that's right. Okay. All right. So we have 2 variance hearings left, and then 1 more piece of chairs business and 2 of agents business. And I'm trying to stall for the 1 minute, but I will do that by starting to pull up documents here.
And there will be 3 agents businesses. 212 Farm Road is going to be also.
Oh, right. Right. Okay. Waiting for my clock to tick over. We know we have the green cards. I can only say that so many times. There we go. It's 8:10. All right. So seeing it's 8:10, I will, and noting that we have the green cards, I will open the variance hearing for 36 Ivy Lane for Janet and Jeff Gannon septic replacement. Once again, Dan McIntyre. Take it away, Dan.
Good evening, Dan McIntyre representing the Gannons. They are in the process of selling their home and failed the Title V inspection. So we will retain to design a new septic system. This particular subdivision was built in the 1970s. The existing well was in the front yard. The system is in the backyard. And there are wetlands on the abutting property down gradient. The only location that we could do here is right back in the same exact location as the existing system. Excuse me. So we dug a couple of test pits around the existing system. We were able to find reasonable soils there to put it back. We are proposing to use an IA technology, the Elgin systems here, in a trench configuration in order to fit, a current size system in that area. We are asking for an offset to the groundwater as allowed by the DEP approval, remedial use approval for the Elgins. If we mounted up the backyard anymore, we would be above the clapboards and cause a real drainage issue in the back of the house. So we meet well offsets for both the on-site well and the closest to Butters well at number 30. We far exceed that one. We are close to the wetlands on the adjacent property. This is an isolated wetlands that we feel that was formed during the subdivision construction. The roadway and the lot development created a low spot there. And the street drainage kind of dumps in there and created a wetland. We have gone to conservation, got approval for this design. The waivers we're asking for are not as extensive as the previous one, but they are related to mainly the groundwater conditions. Again, we're asking for a waiver on the percolation test. We did do one, and this is one where the safety considerations really came into play. As much as I wanted to do another test, Mark and Eileen stopped me from doing it.
Well, as Dan knows, he was trained not to go past 4.5 feet into a hole, so, or up to his chest level, so.
The second one is the groundwater offset being 5 feet in Sherborn. We're asking you to waive that down to, it varies anywhere from 2 feet to almost 4 feet because of the slope of the groundwater. This particular lot was a filled lot. It used to have a pretty severe slope going down to that low point. They filled it in, so that's kind of the reason of the sloping groundwater table in this particular instance. But the Elgin technology is approved for a 2-foot offset under the DEP remedial use approval. And then we have the groundwater less than 5 feet below the surface in some areas of the lot. And then we have 69 feet off the adjacent wetlands instead of the 125 feet. So we are asking for those particular waivers to make this work. But we think it's a big improvement over the existing system, which is within the seasonal high groundwater table. With that, I can turn over for questions.
All right, thanks, Dan. Any questions from the board?
I'm just curious regarding the variance to 8.01. If you had to guess, is more of the system towards the 2 feet separation or towards the higher end of separation?
There's 4 trenches. One of the trenches is at the 2.2 feet. And then the next one is probably 3 feet, then 3.5 feet, and then 3.8 feet. So each one gets progressively further from the water table.
And when you look at the septic plan, Dan put a profile on that to show
Yes.
top center of the plan. So the top center, a little bit to the right. And that'll show that profile with the 3.8 to the 2.2. Perfect.
All right, other questions? Do we have any abutters present? All right, hearing no comments there, we can proceed to the voting on the variances unless there's any other discussion. All right, so can I have a motion to approve a variance to section 5.1D requiring 2 percolation tests, and then 1 was provided here for safety reasons?
So
So
moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, so I have a motion to approve a variance to section 8.01 for groundwater offset of 5 feet. As just noted, there's a sloping groundwater offset here, which meets standards using IA technology.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, can I have a motion to approve a variance to section 8.02 depth of seasonal high groundwater less than 5 feet, as this is a naturally occurring condition?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, can I have a motion to approve a variance to section 10.2 wetland offset typically required at 125 feet, 69 feet is provided, noting that this was approved by Concom.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, any further comment before I close the hearing? All right, so hearing is closed. Mark, are the plans ready for approval?
Yes, they are, and they're conditional to 2 deed recordings, one for the garbage grinder prohibition and the other one for the use of IA innovative alternative technology.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the plans conditional to those 2 deed recordings?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, I.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Have a good night.
Thank you, Dan.
And Dan, hopefully you'll stay. I don't know when 212 Farm Road will be presented, but be nice.
Yeah,
if-
I'll just stay on whenever you get to it. That's fine.
All right, we should be able to do that relatively soon after the next scheduled hearing. Anybody have any jokes? 2 minutes. I guess we could ask, are there representatives here for 81 Brush Hill Road?
Hi, we are here. I'm Rory McGrath and this is Peter Alphas. I'm the homeowner and this is my husband.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Matt?
Doing well. We will, we'll give it 1 minute, then we'll open up just
Okay.
to be strict. Long minute.
I could ask for someone to play the recorder for us to fill this time, but I don't think he could get here in time.
Are you enjoying the recorder year again?
Well, yeah, again, we'll see. My second child is much more enthusiastic about the recorder, so I think
Julie.
especially since it was the first thing I heard when he got in the car today, and it's all I heard.
Inside your head for the rest of time.
Oh, God.
That was the
Yes,
experience
yes.
here. All right.
Lots of improv. Yeah.
All right, so it is now 8:20, so we can open up this discussion. Mark, do you want to frame this for us?
Sure. Back at the end of July, excuse me, I received a complaint from the state of Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection indicating that a cesspool or, well, we knew it was a cesspool, was being pumped out with a sump pump. There's the information right there. So I in turn forwarded an order to the owners to not do that, and they also were informed that there would be a future need to clean up the area wherever the discharge had gone, and some of it, according to an abutter, went towards his property. So the state gave me information on best cleanup, which was to lime the property, and that was done by the homeowners, so that was completed. And the other need was to recognize any issues with the abutter as well. The abutter did inform us in an office visit about 3 weeks later that the well tests were complete and there was no issue with the bacterial levels. So that order, I believe, has been completed. The next order that went out was in respect to the status of the cesspool. We have a Title V inspection on file, and it notes it in there. And that notes that there was backup into the house as well as intrusion of the cesspool effluent into the groundwater, or groundwater coming back into the cesspool, which indicates the cesspool's in groundwater. So this order was sent out, and pretty much, I believe we're here to discuss that they need to know that the cesspool needs to be replaced as soon as possible. It's pending the board's review on doing a final approval of the septic system, which is almost ready to be at our meeting, but we are waiting for the proper notification to the abutters. And that's my quick summary.
Yes, the variance hearing for that is scheduled for October 4th.
Thank you, Ellen.
Right. I think the only other documents I have here are the Title V, which I think we'd seen previously. And then, oh, sorry. And so I guess any questions first from the board about any of this, and then I'll go to the owners.
I think we covered most of it at the last meeting, what the issues were, what the Title V report said, what the observations of the agent had been, the timelines for replacing cesspools that are in failure, the vacant status of the property for some portion of the time. So I think we have gone over a lot of that among the board, but abutters or someone else may have questions about those details.
So I guess first, owners have any questions about the situation?
No, we don't have any questions. I would like to just clarify two things. One, with regard to the pumping, the house has actually been empty for close to 10 years. And we had it professionally pumped 3 days before. My husband was trying to figure something out, understands in hindsight, absolutely shouldn't have looked into the cesspool. We did. It will never happen again. We apologize. We did mitigate the situation by spreading the lime over the property. But then also no backup has ever occurred in the house. What I think when it was Scott Septic, was it Scott Septic? Scott Septic that failed the cesspool because it's a cesspool back in April of 2022. We purchased the house in January of 2023. We have every intention of putting a new septic in before we're using the house as a rental, before moving anyone in. And we had canceled our August meeting before the board because, quite frankly, we just had a lot going on in our personal lives and no one's in the home, and the home isn't quite ready for anyone to move in yet. So we rescheduled for October as soon as we could get on, and we just wanted the board to know there's nothing nefarious going on. And we have every intention of moving forward with the septic plan.
I just want to
say one thing because I'm the person that did the very, very
Foolish. yeah.
foolish mistake, but I just had to explain that this was top groundwater that was coming down the properties, and it follows the water line. The cesspool is 10 feet below the house to the side. So
With all the rain.
we didn't have a proper cover on it, okay? So the water was just rushing down and a lot was going in to the cover that wasn't appropriate. So I looked in once and I'm like, oh, this is really clear, but I should have this pumped out. So I called a professional and he came and he's like, oh, this is all water. And I'm like, yeah, it looks very clear. And stupidly, and we've had so much rain that the next time I looked again, it was filled with this beautiful, clear
I don't know that I
water.
would call it
No,
beautiful.
it was beautiful. It was clear as can be. I have pictures. So my guy did a scope of the pipes with the cameras and everything, and there's no backups, no blockages. They're very, very clean. And he says, do you just want to pump out this water? And I looked at him and I'm like, sure. And I didn't, optically, it's the middle of the day, I'm in flip-flops, okay? But there was no sewage, there was no smell
No fecal
whatsoever,
matter.
none.
Yeah.
Nobody's used the toilet in 10 years. So we put the pump in, you could see it right to the bottom, crystal clear. I also have pictures of that. And we pumped it towards the middle of my front yard. And my neighbor came and he's like, you shouldn't be doing that. And I said, I know, come here, I just want to show you what I'm doing. And understandably, he panicked and got in his truck and he called the DEP. I walked the hose to my backyard and put the water. All I'm just trying to say is optically, it was so stupid. I wasn't trying to pump anything that would be harmful to anybody.
Right.
And since then, I would like, so do you understand this? Before the inspector asked us to put a proper cover on, we did. And I put a French drain around the back of the house that took that groundwater away from the cesspool. And what I'm just trying to tell you is it is a perftly functioning cesspool.
Which we are not going to use because we are looking
Right,
towards
but it
getting a
doesn't, there's
proper
no
septic.
there's no groundwater getting into it. It was purely the cover. And all I'm just trying to tell you is that mistake learned, and
We're very sorry, and we're sorry to
yeah,
our neighbor,
and
and hopefully that will
yes,
take care of
but
it.
I just want you to understand that I would never, ever,
Trying
ever,
to
ever try to
contaminate
put
anyone's property, yes.
in the middle of the day sewage or something awful on my own property. I didn't run it to the street or to a drain. I literally had it, you know, and if some did roll to the street, it was minor. And as I say, I can understand why he had that sense of panic, but that's what it was.
Yeah, and we apologize. And again, we did what we needed to do to mitigate the situation, and we're sorry. We're very, very sorry.
But thank you for that.
Okay.
It sounds like importantly, he tested as well and everything was fine, and sort of that's been addressed. And so I think the main thing really is just ensuring that as you said, there will be no occupants or use of the system until the new system is in.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And I know that the board was concerned because we had placed on Zillow an ad for the home for rental. And I just want the board to know that I'm within my legal rights to do that. And it was really to kind of gauge interest and if the price point that we were looking for was appropriate. But anyone that called us or came to look at the house was informed that the house was not ready yet. And the two serious lookers were informed that there is a need for a new septic and no one will be moving into the house until that time. So we're following the rules going forward, and we're very sorry.
Okay. Just to go over two things. For anyone else who may be listening and thinking that one can visually determine if water is clean coming out of a cesspool.
Yeah.
The answer to that would be no. Right. And so this is the reason that this system failed is two-part. One, the inspector indicated, well, there were three parts, but there are two that we're going to deal with now, is that there was backup of sewage into the facility or a system component. And there was mention about the D-box having issues and what have you. So it wasn't necessarily into the house. So you might not have known that. And actually the inspection was done prior to you owning it. And things may have changed somewhat, but it indicated some sort of problem with the system in general. And that is a failure criteria. And the other one was that the cesspool itself was sitting in high groundwater. And so some of the water that was in there might have been running off of the surface, but it might have been coming in from the ground. And the cesspools are just not that great at treating things. If it was sitting in groundwater, things stay wet for a long time. That promotes the survival of bacteria and viruses. So it seems like it wouldn't be any contaminants left, but they can survive a very long time if they're maintained in a wet condition. So that's the part that we just have to be very careful of, regardless of how clean it looks overall. So I know you're not going to do that again, but that's just a little bit of the background about why we're concerned, no matter how clean it looked to you. So
I will just say that had I been aware that that's what he was doing, I would never have allowed that to happen. But yeah.
So now learning experience.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Any other, I mean, I think you guys understand the issues, which is the important thing. And we will plan to see you again in about a month with the plans. Any other questions or comments from the board on this?
I don't, but Rory, do you feel like you understand the abutter notification process?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And could I just ask, did the abutter letters go out today, like you had indicated?
You know what, Ellen, I didn't receive the updated letter with the updated dates that I wanted to send out to the abutters. I had sent you and Eric an email about that, and I don't know who generates the letter.
Eric does, but you can take the one he gave you for either of the two previously scheduled hearings and just change the date to October 4th at 7:30.
Okay. I think I need him to resend it to me. But not a problem. I am on it. So we're good. We're good there.
Yeah, because it's now less than a month. They should go out immediately.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll see you October 4th.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Good night.
All right. I think if we still have Dan here, it probably makes sense to do 212 Farm Road. Does that make sense, Mark?
Yes, if Dan's here, I agree. I apologize to the others, but this shouldn't go too long. Dan is replacing a septic system at 212 Farm Road. This is the extension road that goes down to the end of the pond. And in doing so, as you can see, the grading, this is on an esker, which is basically all sand and gravel. So Dan had to set up an adjustment, a groundwater adjustment, because we couldn't find groundwater, but they dug as deep as they could. That's been completed, as well as he gave some comparison to the elevation of the pond itself, which probably is where the groundwater is. But with the groundwater adjustment based on the soil testing, it's conservative. It fits the requirements of our codes. The plan's ready for approval, are conditional to a deed recording for the garbage grinder prohibition. There are no other no other waivers being requested, just the garbage grinder prohibition deed recording.
All right. Anything you want to add, Dan?
No, I think that covers this. It was an easy one.
Sounds good. Any questions from the board on this?
Seems straightforward since really the garbage grinder is about sizing of the system as opposed to distances to groundwater, et cetera. So,
And it is an improvement over the existing condition, which is closer to both the well and the pond. So we're getting further away from both.
mhm.
All right. So if no more comment, can I get a motion to approve the plans conditional on a garbage grinder deed recording?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion?
Just whether there are any people in attendance who had a question on this.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a slight deviance. So the garbage grinder, you mean like that you put in a sink?
Yeah,
Like-
the system is not sized to allow one of those.
Oh, so it has to go on a deed?
Yes, it's deed recorded so that people, when the property is transferred, know that they can't install a garbage grinder.
Gotcha.
So garbage grinders in general clog up your leaching field. They will just shorten the life of any system. Much better to fling your scraps of food into the woods or something. And so you get a reduction in size of the system. So you have to make it extra big if you have a garbage grinder because it will clog up as a result of using a garbage grinder.
Gotcha.
Compost. I think you meant to say compost, Daryl.
Compost is a term.
Yes, you could compost or you could fling it into the woods where it will compost.
After
you won't
being
have to do
attacked-
anything extra.
After being attacked by the swarm of bees living on my compost pile, I'm on team fling now.
Oh.
All right. So with that discussion, and I think we have a motion in a second. So if no more questions, I'll say Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right, great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Now
Thanks,
you're-
Dan.
So next topic will be the dead fish in Farm Pond.
Matt, if I could ask, we have, unless there's a lot of people here for Farm Pond as well, we have two people that I believe showed up at the beginning of the meeting, one for 44 South Main and the other one's for 31 South Field.
Okay.
It's up to you.
We do have a few people for Farm Pond. So
Okay, that's
who've
fine.
also been on.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. So let's address Farm Pond and then we'll move to 31 and then 44. So who is best to discuss the Farm Pond fish issue? Daryl, I don't know
Mark,
if
do you want to give a little intro
Yeah,
since
Mark,
you've
maybe.
been kind of
Sure.
a-
We started getting calls about, I don't know, 2 weeks ago from residents and people that use Farm Pond that there were dead fish showing up at the pond. This has been a group effort with town administration and staff, as well as with Tom Trainer, with Catherine Rubio, is it? And so they all were trying to get the Division of Wildlife and Fisheries or Division of Fisheries and Wildlife to review this. And they did it by phone, but they never came out to see the actual situation. I went down there a week ago and took some pictures. And these may be the pictures I took, but there were mostly smaller fish, but there were 3 larger fish, one at the boat ramp and 2 to the right side of the beach. If you're looking at the beach to the, looking out at the beach. With that said, additional work occurred. I guess one of the town administrative staff members went down there to rake up the dead fish, which was pretty good on her part. And I guess the next step now is just to make sure they don't reappear, but they may. Another point of view came across, not a point of view, but a scientific review from one of our residents who decided to take some of these fish and diagnose them. He's I think a veterinarian pathologist, I believe. And so it was nice for this resident to go forward and offer his services. Yeah, I think he's certified in pathology in the veterinarian side. And this is his report as we see. And he notes in that report that some concerns are there for possible nitrogen overload. And that's, I think, down to the smaller sentence. It goes, the colder weather, goes on to talk about some of my eyesight's not reading that well, but I just read it a little while ago that it could be part of that. Thank you. And then he also notes that we have to pay attention to continuing to test for fecal bacteria, but also for nitrogen. And I think that's the next sentence where it talks about E. coli and then nitrogen levels in particular, about doing that as well. And it sounds like possibly educating too, but I'm hoping this person can help us through the whole process. There's been different views on what's causing this. Again, that's pretty much my end of it, but as time goes on, hopefully we'll see less dead fish out there.
And we haven't seen issues over the summer for the testing that gets done, that gets reviewed by Mark and Ellen.
Yeah, that's
for
a
the
good
water
point.
quality parameters for the beach use. So
this has actually been a pretty good year, and it could be dilution as well, but we have not seen spikes in the bacteria levels that have to be tested for a swimming beach every week.
But as he points out, we don't typically test nitrogen levels, right?
We don't. No, nitrogen levels are not tested.
But the limnologists that the Farm Pond Advisory Committee has hired, are they doing that? Oh, Tom might be able to answer that.
I can answer that, and thank you, Mark. That was a good overview. But if I could start by saying, yeah, this was a definitely something new for the pond. We've all seen occasional dead fish or two, but this was many dozen to 100, along the shoreline. So we were quite concerned. Both myself and Catherine Rocchio of the Farm Pond Advisory Committee, both of us had separate conversations with the fisheries biologist at Mass Fish and Wildlife. His take on it in discussing the patterns with us and seeing additional photos was he was guessing that it was a natural type of die-off of fish, which he said is not that uncommon, even though it's not something that we're accustomed to seeing. And as Mark mentioned, we really lucked out. We have a recently retired Army officer who just moved into town, and he is the board certified veterinary pathologist who is now scrambling to find a lab he can get some paraffin mounted specimen slides to investigate further to try to identify the possible pathogen or disease involved. He I think it was in that letter that Mark showed. I believe he stated he didn't think it was any human health concern, which of course was good to hear. Jeannie Guthrie did that amazing cleanup of the boat ramp and the public beach, and that was last weekend. And since then, I've gone down about every other day, and there's still dead fish appearing, but I think the rate of appearance has really dropped off. And the last thing, which was your original question, Daryl, on nitrogen. Earlier studies at the pond have always considered Farm Pond to be phosphorus limiting in terms of nutrients, in terms of phytoplankton and algae growth, cyanobacteria growth. But as you stated, the Farm Pond Committee got a state grant and is in the middle of first year of a 2-year very detailed analysis of the pond, the water, and the watershed and the land use. And as part of that, the consultant is doing both phosphorus and nitrogen nitrate sampling at multiple depths, multiple locations, which we had never done in the past. We had just done phosphorus. So that's, I think that's an update I can provide.
Can I pop in with a little bit? I think, Tom, also it's interesting that Hillary had also shared that, having some of those perch die off might not necessarily be a bad thing, because if they overpopulate, then they start eating down the zooplankton, which helps keep the green algae under control, which of course last year was such a big giant problem. I just think that's interesting to also keep in our minds, because it reminds us of the cycle and the ecology of the pond and how one thing affects the other and how sensitive the whole system is. The other thing I just wanted to bring forward is also as someone who picked up dead fish in the past couple of weeks, the big ones smell terrible, and the little guys, the little perch, it didn't take long for them to start decomposing. I mean, Daryl, I know you're down there swimming all the time. I'm sure you noticed as well. I think, going forward, if this happens again, which I suppose something similar could certainly happen sometime in the future, that maybe we can work on coordinating, like getting that cleaned up. It was just, a little tricky. Like when it first landed, nobody knew what was going on. And of course, FPAC, as Tom already described, was spending a lot of time trying to figure out what was going on. Is this a health hazard? Like, what's happening? What are we supposed to do? In the meantime, all these dead fish kept piling up on the shore. And I just sort of feel like as a town, we probably, could have done something differently, right? And maybe work on, when this happens and we're made aware of it, have some process for cleaning it up, other than a bunch of people going down with buckets and trying to put them somewhere else.
It does seem like there could be a better process.
Yeah.
I have to say, this has been
probably flinging into the woods again.
Actually, that scooping them up and just putting them away from the pond would not be a bad idea. So one of the rare times I have not been to the pond in a few weeks, which has been I'm going through withdrawal, but.
Oh, you have to get down. You won't believe how clear it is. I mean, despite all the dead fish, which of course is nasty on the shore, it's like ridiculously clear.
Oh,
I noticed that too. It's very clear down last week. The clarity was excellent.
Yep.
Tom, you had mentioned that the nitrogen testing for the watershed plan was happening at multiple depths, but temporally, how frequently is this happening? The testing? I don't know I don't remember the plan.
I'm sorry, Julie, were you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tom, or anyone on the Farm Pond Advisory. I was just curious as to the frequency of water quality testing, particularly for the nitrogen.
Monthly.
Monthly. Thank you. And do you guys does the advisory council get, do you see that in real time every month? Is that provided to you? Or is it part of one big final report?
We're waiting for an end of the season report. The consultant's work, she hasn't been providing it monthly.
Okay, that'll be interesting to see.
Did it come up whether DPW would be a group that would clean up the pond shore of this?
I think so. I think, part of what happened was I think that DPW was tied up with a number of things. So that's how it ended up being sort of a more organic kind of process. Yeah.
All right, I think, but good to know that they are hopefully willing in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And then we could figure out that, right. Maybe some farmer would like to plant fish with corn or something.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
And I think it's important too, the chain of communication. I know, Daryl, you and I spoke. We were getting the calls that they're going to call the Board of Health. We're the first person. It seems like we're the first department they're going to call. So I failed to communicate some of my information out, but I think if we have a chain of where to communicate everything out to, that would be helpful too. Like have a list of all the different departments we need to send information to.
right, because this one is an interesting one. We don't know if it's usually we're doing for Board of Health, public health, and is swimmability and that kind of thing, or coming into contact with the water. But it's an important environmental issue, certainly from the perspective of the fish. Or maybe it's a good thing, as Melinda pointed out about the balance that needs to be in the pond. So it's complicated and with unknowns. So I do agree with you, Mark, that just sharing the information around is good. And now we have the person who's willing to investigate it, which is fantastic, and maybe shed some light on some details.
Yes, it'd be nice for us to hear back, both with those details and once we get sort of the reports from the consultant on nitrogen levels, if we think there might be a connection. So it'd be great once you and Farm Pond Advisory have that, if you could just sort of let us know, and we'll get you back on the agenda to hear the results.
Okay, sure. Yeah, the consultant's been amazing. I don't know if any of you had a chance to see the presentation she put together for us in June to sort of give the overview of what she would be doing. If you haven't, the link is on the town website, and I strongly suggest watching it. It's really informative and helps, all the residents understand the scope of the work that she's doing. And she's been really great about sort of dip sticking along the way too. But we are looking forward to that sort of midterm summary from her.
Yes, we told our new neighbors to watch it because it was a great presentation. And it's so packed with information that she presents so well. It was really, there was not a dull moment in it.
Right. And she spoke very fluidly using a lot of technical terms, right? And words that probably most of us don't know, but it all made sense when she said them. So yeah, it's good.
You guys did a great job finding her. I'm sure
we got to defer to Tom. Tom, you own that. That was good.
All right, thank you all. Mark, should we move on to 31 Southfield?
Sure, we can move on to 31 South. You should have, thanks to Ellen putting together this agenda. Thank you very much, Ellen. Some information on it. The owner is proposing to do not renovate, but to complete and finish the basement. And in doing so, it's the intent of the people there is to make sure they have some gym equipment and cardio exercising and so forth. What came up in question was a couple things. One, that you just went through the Sani flow, but that's all set. They're using a grinder pump. So the ejector pump, that's a perfect plan to show for the half bath, is going to meet the requirements under Title V. What came up was the room count. This is down at Southfield. They're all built either as 2 or 3 bedroom facilities. This facility is a 2-bedroom. It has a loft on the second floor and 2 bedrooms. On the first floor, it has 3 rooms, the kitchen, the dining, and the living. And, it's called dining, family, and kitchen. And so we have 5 rooms total. This being a 2-bedroom, the board has looked in past practice that a 2-bedroom can have up to 5 rooms. But this is also a 40B project, and it went through zoning. That's why I have this information available. It's in the zoning or the court's decision. And so the board, I brought this to the board because I'm not for sure how you see the basement and how it blends into the room count for a 2-bedroom facility. And I believe the owner or the homeowner is here to discuss it as well. But it was that plan of the basement, Matt, that really, but you did show those other plans. Those show the room count.
Yeah. So I was just going to quickly review the room count. These are a little hard to see, but it looks like it is kitchen, dining, family room. So 1, 2, 3 on the first floor. This is garage, I assume, right here.
That's correct.
And then second floor is, again, a little hard to see, but it looks like it's 1, 2 bedrooms.
Yeah, correct.
Sorry about that, but on the first floor, sorry, this is only one. I mean, we don't have the separate dining room. It's just an area.
Okay, we would probably count it as 3, just because I mean it's sort of labeled as 3 use spaces here.
Yeah, but this is no. I mean, yeah, it's just kitchen and the living space. Okay. There are no dining room.
Okay, so I guess it comes down to our definition of a space and whether we sometimes will say whatever the potential use is. And so I guess the question is this, one eat-in kitchen and then a family room, or is it a kitchen as a specific use space and then a big family room, or is it a kitchen as a use space, a dining area, and a separate living area?
Yeah.
So I guess that's maybe more of a question we need to discuss. At most, it's 3 rooms. Maybe it's 2 rooms, I guess, is what we come down to here. Yeah. And then the second floor is 2 bedrooms, and then a lot of sort of closet and hall space.
Yeah.
So it looks like we are at 4 or 5 rooms, depending on how we define this, and 2 bedrooms. And then in the basement, we have these proposed rooms, which I think, again, is sort of in a 2 to 3 room situation is probably how I would view this.
Yeah, that's where I had trouble for the board, and that's why I brought it to the board. I don't know if this would be considered 3 rooms with the L-shaped room of the cardio area and the gym area, or 1 room and the yoga is the other room. So that's why I brought it to the board for your review.
Okay.
Also, do we know what the assessors view the existing space as, separate from this basement?
I don't have that information, Daryl. I'm not for sure.
Or what maybe ZBA could also illuminate how these units were defined. So we look at a number of things, not just how people are using the house at the moment, but and they're open plan living arrangements, but we do look at functional spaces. So that's why just a wall is not the only thing that determines room count, especially when you have completely open spaces in homes. So it's tricky. There's some gray areas in interpretation, and we try to be consistent with how we've treated other similar spaces. So. Okay, but I guess for me, I see this, if this was on the first floor, I'd call it 3 rooms. In the basement, I'm inclined to maybe view it as 2, just because of the nature of the flow.
I think, it's, the yoga area is clearly separate because it's walls and a door. The other 2 have a relatively large opening, it looks like there, which is sort of consistent with, in the past, what we've called a single space. Also, are these all support columns here? Is that what these indications are?
No, this is detectors, smoke detectors.
Smoke detectors, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
If I can ask a question, is this a walkout basement? Adam, I don't know.
I'm not sure that I understand the question. Sorry.
Is there a door directly to the outside here?
Yes.
Door
here. Yeah.
And does that go to like a set of cellar stairs, or does that go like step out to lawn?
To lawn.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, can I give a little intro here, because I'm a doctor, cardiologist. Yeah, I've been, you know, treating the patient with a high risky patient with MI and stroke, and then right now I just faced with the same problem. So my doctor told me that you have a pre-diabetic and you have a very high risk for all these cardiovascular complications. And you know, it's the destiny. Yeah, and I've just faced with that. And then he recommended me, my doctor, despite the fact that I'm a cardiologist, he recommended that you have to use your, I mean, dirty you know, basement to everyday exercise and to give your yoga stuff. So we are, in our family, we are four. We're just 4 and 2, a high schooler which going to go away, I mean, hopefully in 1 year. And we don't have any relatives, whatever. We don't intend to increase our living space. We don't need any kind of rooms or whatever, but I need it for health. I mean, it's really something which became a very important for me. I don't have time to go to gym, whatever, drive there, because I need that every day. And right now, this area, it's not just not usable, but it's even, you know, it's not safe because it's dirty, it's cold. I mean, lots of spiders over there, and I mean, it's transferred to very, for me, it's not a high, even on hygienical point of view. This is very strange area. That's
So
why.
I think I think the main point we have to make here, I think we totally, I mean, I'm a vascular neurologist. I completely appreciate the need to exercise to reduce your stroke risk, right? If all my patients did, that'd be great. But I think from the Board of Health perspective, I think what we have to consider is what is not just the current use, but the potential use of the space. And so I think one of the concerns is whether sort of this could eventually be converted into bedrooms, and I think we'd have to address that. And then the total number of rooms in the house has to be consistent with the septic system. And so I think the intended use here is noble. There's no question. But we have to think about, you know, what is the next person going to use it for if you suddenly decide you need to move, right? And we need to sort of make sure we're within our regulations. And so that's what brings us down to sort of this question of counting rooms. And so I think in this sort of a basement space, I think calling these 2 rooms would be consistent with what we've done in the past. Given the size of that opening between the spaces and that it's sort of one shared space that presumably would be recorded not to be used as a bedroom, given the limitations on the bedroom size for the house.
And yeah, the other issue is that right now it may be just too many rooms for the septic system sizing, and that's just the rules from Mass DEP about how you size a septic system. By going larger could potentially overwhelm the system, and if we make exceptions in one area, we'd have to do it for others, and then the system would just be underperforming in the future potentially. So that's what we have to be concerned with, and there are some other ways around that, deed recordings, but we're just trying to treat this the same as we do for every other home in Sherborn. And ZBA did instruct us to do that and provide our opinion to them about it.
So it seems to me that at a minimum, we have 6 rooms, and potentially more than that. And in a 2-bedroom system, we would be limited to 5 typically. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And
so
maybe
we either have 6 or 7.
Yeah. And if I, for example, do not separate yoga Pilates area because I need that, but I can, you know, not separate that room. Just click this, just, you know, keep that open, not to build any additional room. Is it okay? I mean, in that
So
case.
I mean, I guess that's one approach. Like if these walls aren't constructed and this is just one big open space, then I think it counts as one room, and then I think we're okay.
Yeah, I can do that. I mean, it's not a big deal for me. It's just, you know, a little bit because I need some undress, whatever. But it's not vitally important. I mean, wall. I cannot build that.
Which
I don't know
then
whether the
leads us
board knew about
to
that.
needing to do perhaps some research as to when these were built and in the plans presented to ZBA, what was presented to them as a room count? Did they only provide bedroom counts? Then that leaves us some discretion for our evaluation about whether we consider that an eat-in kitchen and a living room on the first floor or not. But so ZBA wants to be consistent with what was presented to them. So they would take our information and then merge that. For us to give a good evaluation, we might need to know what that is, what the starting point is from their perspective. Which is tough when we're doing this at night at the same time that they're having another hearing, so we can't really ask them easily.
Actually, I'm ready to do whatever you recommend, whatever you suggest me. I mean, I'm very flexible. Just I ask you some help with that, so
right,
because I don't understand what to do. I'm ready to not to put walls, whatever it need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think at a minimum, probably there can't be walls down there. And then
Okay.
I can't recall
Mm-hmm.
whether we had info in here. I don't think we did about what the ZBA opinion was on the room count. Is that correct,
right.
Mark?
Yeah, I believe they did bedroom count. I'm not for sure if they did room count, but past practice for the board has been, we've only had one or two bedroom facilities in our town, and those could only have up to 5 rooms. So that's past practice of what the board does on 2-bedroom septic systems. And this is more of a communal system, so it's for all the bedrooms. But again, I'm just going by what we have done for 2-bedroom septic systems in the past, that we allowed up to 5 rooms.
Mm-hmm. So I guess one thing, could we authorize Mark to check on how this unit has been defined to ZBA in terms of room count? And if there is no definition, then would we want to evaluate what we would do in the absence of any specification by ZBA? And then Mark could know kind of which way it would go. That might mean that 1 room in the basement would be fine if we determine that it's 4 rooms right now versus 5. And then the 1 room in the basement would be the 5th room. And that would be okay.
Yeah.
But if it's defined to ZBA as 3 rooms on the first floor, then they're already at 5, and then we'd have to start talking about, that would probably require maybe at the next meeting to then talk about a deed recording, not to ever put in a full bath down in the basement. And
we're not, I'm not going to, sorry about the interrupt, I'm not going to put the full bath in a basement. So
yeah,
it just,
I think the
half.
point, I think the point we're making is that we'd have to have a deed recording so that nobody in the future could ever put a full bath in there also.
Oh yeah. That.
So I think that seems like a reasonable approach, is authorizing Mark to understand how the ZBA defines the room count. And if they don't, then it'll come back to us to define the room count and decide the right approach there. And so that's, I think, probably what we do, and then put this on the agenda for the next meeting, if you think you can do that fast enough, Mark.
I'll start working on it tomorrow. I might send, well, I'll work with Darryl on who to send the email to.
mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Artem. We'll get back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, have a nice one. Bye-bye.
All right. So the next and I think final item is 44 South Main.
We should have some information on that. What happened was we got notice from the building commissioner that the house at 40, and I believe the homeowner's here.
I am. Good evening.
Thank you. I'll give a summary, and then the board will let you know, Jonathan, when they'll ask for your input, I'm sure as well. They will ask for your input. So we got a notice from the building commissioner back on July 19th. We noted that this is an after the fact building permit. What that means is the work that was done, a permit wasn't drawn, but it got brought to the building commissioner's attention, I believe, because the house is for sale. You can correct me, Jonathan, later if I'm wrong. And so I approved the second floor. Oh, there it is right there. So you can see it says after the fact.
Yeah.
The second floor had a yoga room and an open loft. So that wasn't really concerning, because after looking at that and the room count itself, there was 9. That would have made the 9th total room, the yoga room, because there's 8 rooms in the house and it's a 4-bedroom septic system. What became more not concerning, but what needed to be questioned was the room in the garage. There's finished space in the garage, and it's not heated. There was a portable heater, but it's not heated with a permanent heater. And it has a big screen door as well as a permanent door that closes it off. So that room there becomes the question. Is this a 10th room? Will the board consider it a 10th room? So that's why I brought it to your attention. It's being used right now as a living room with couches and sofa chairs and so forth.
It's really being used as a screen porch, because I knew I could not add a screen porch to the house given abutting conservation land on the other side, and that we couldn't do anything to increase the footprint. My wife had always wanted a screen porch, so I did a custom screen in front of the garage door, which is not a tempered garage door. It's not insulated to any level. It's not that would meet code for a dedicated 4-season room, and it is not heated, not conditioned, as Mark said. And I would just to add a little bit more color. I'm talking to you today, having moved. We are supposed to close on the 18th of this month. So the buyers very much like the screened-in room. It was one of their requirements that the room stay largely intact, I believe was the language in the PNS. And so I'm just hoping that based on what we've done here, we're certainly not trying to create a 10th room.
So thanks, that's helpful. So I think, so the core issue, Mark, is
Sure.
is room count, and does this count as a room?
That is correct.
It's a little hard for me not having a plan to look at.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean it's a 3-car garage that was in the barn. The house is 1890, and there are 3 bays. We maintain the 3 bays. It's the same types of garage doors in front of every one, and I put a screen in front of it, and we have a TV on the wall. Similarly that you could put in a garage. So that's the spirit in which we did it.
I mean, based on what you're describing, it sounds like unconditioned space. And so then we wouldn't typically count that as a room. I think the only trouble I'm having is I don't have a plan. I don't have a picture everything in front of me, right?
We actually have pictures.
Yeah, you can.
We do? Okay.
Daryl, do you have the ones I sent to you, or do you want me to? I don't know if I sent them by text or by email.
If you could bring it up, that would be great.
I'll stop
or
sharing, Mark, if you want to share.
It'd take me a few minutes to pull it up.
And I will try my best. I have to pull the pictures up too. 1 second.
The other thing that I would just add is it has the fire door on a spring that you need in any garage setup. So I think it really does warm that use.
There was some door I thought I saw that was more like a sliding, hanging door that didn't look like an insulated outside door.
It's not that. You're right, Daryl. We put one of those reclaimed barn doors in front of that fire door.
I thought one could look into, I couldn't tell, again, without a floor plan, if I was just
Yeah.
looking into another living space. And I didn't see that other door. I don't know. It's hard to tell. It looks like to me, it looked like it was an open flow from what I presumed might have been the main condition part of the house into this other space, which would then suggest some flow and heat flow from there. It just starts to make it very murky, which is
no, I
I
understand.
think if I can see a floor plan that shows this was a garage and it's unheated and there's a garage fire door there, then that's fine. Like that's done, right? I just don't have anything that says that.
Sure.
I'm sure it exists. I just am not looking at it. Like
absolutely, we can send that, and that's all the work I did with Chris as well to make sure that it was conforming to, you know, at the time when we bought the house, you didn't need to have, you know, spring hinged fire doors. So we, you know, all of that has been brought up to code. But sure, we can get you a floor plan, no problem.
And because
to whom should I send that?
Well, if we hold on for a second, Daryl, I'm sorry to put you under this pressure, but
yeah, no, that's okay.
I'm
I'm
a couple pictures, and I don't know how to
opening up email.
The Zoom, but they came in two different emails. One labeled 44 South Main, the other one no subject. That way, we can at least have a couple pictures to see the room and the door.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I've got a couple of things here.
And I just found a third picture.
Okay, so I found a floor plan. Just having trouble getting, since it's embedded in the email, I want to disconnect it so I can manipulate it and rotate it, but it's embedded in the email. So let me see what I can do here. Here we go. All right, I'm getting closer.
And if you want, Daryl, I can send those pictures to myself and try to upload it. And they're on my
Okay,
phone.
let me get this one up and then I'll work on the others. But at least there'll be something to talk about.
all right, there we go. That's useful.
Okay.
All right, so going through this, so I assume that this third bay here, that's labeled 3-season screened. That's the location in question. Correct. And then these doors have been replaced by screens, or there are screens and then still a garage door that will.
There's a screen that can be rolled down in front of the garage door.
Got it.
So
okay.
Yeah, so the garage door can be opened up, screen comes down, and you got your screen in there.
Okay. And there are photos. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, I mean, yeah, I agree. This looks like fairly finished space. And then the question is, where does that go?
This door
that goes into the mudroom.
Yes, and it does
goes into the mudroom. And there's a fire door there now, and that was in order to make sure that I was conforming to it being a garage space. That I'm happy to send pictures of that. But there's the full spring-loaded hinge door that sliding door slides in front of that. It's just aesthetic. But behind that door now, if you slide it open, there's a metal firewall.
All right. And this looks like a wall heater?
That was a wall heater that I pulled those out because that was the other thing Chris had said. You can't have any kind of permanent heat in there. There's a ceramic wall heater, correct?
I guess there too, at least. And I guess it's not just plumbing, it could be electric. So once it's a heated space, we have to count it in the room count.
It's just an outlet. I mean, it's not. It's just an outlet. So that is gone.
Okay.
And it can. I mean, I believe it can have outlets.
All right. One, I guess we need to just have confirmation of that. Okay. And sorry, Mark, I haven't gotten around to pulling up whatever else you sent yet, but and we'd need a deed recording so that future owners know that the house can't have any more rooms, and that restoring that heat, if that's what they've seen already and think that's okay, they need to know that it's not.
Yeah.
Without upgrading the septic system.
Sure. I don't think there'll be any. What they want is the screen, and to be able to, sit out there and the weather's appropriate.
Okay.
So I don't think there'll be any issue with the deed recording. If I had to, undo everything, I would be in a world of hurt. I'm just telling you, and I know this is self-induced at some level, but I have done, absolutely everything that the building inspector has asked me to do. I've spent about $35,000 making everything up to current code, because when I did do it, which was totally my fault, the code has changed. So obviously, opening a permit after the fact, I have to do that. I was very clear with Chris that if this wouldn't pass muster, I would bring everything up to code, but I would slow walk it because I wasn't in a financial position to spend that money, without having a house closing on the other end of it. So I'm just being honest with you guys about where I am.
So I think to summarize here, it's going over the room count. There are 9 rooms plus this one. So yes, this can't be a 10th room. I think the key things are just that it's no longer heated and that it is separated from conditioned space. And so I think assuming that's done and there's a deed recording that it can never be heated or connected to conditioned space, then I think that can be acceptable.
Okay. All right.
I have to hear I have to make sure the rest of the board agrees. That's
I understand. I understand. I understand. Thank
you. Do others on the board feel reasonable with that? I mean, it's a little bit of an unconventional screen porch, but I think, if we can ensure that it's never a conditioned space, then it's not conditioned space.
Or unless and until the septic is upgraded, right, or something else changes, Or hopefully people would come to us before they do it so we could explain their options, reduce the room count somewhere else.
Yeah,
and you could heat that, and it makes it so much easier than doing it after the fact.
Can I please say something? Can I please say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca. Sorry, you were breaking up. I couldn't hear you.
I just think it's a room. I'm really sorry. It's a room. And, you took the heat out and you took the electric, for everyone's sake, it's going to take 5 minutes for them to put it back in. And
it's just an outlet.
I understand what it is, but I'm just saying that it puts us in a really bad position. And we are just trying to do the right thing and follow the rules. And the reality is, this was all, if you came to us before you did it, we probably would have said, hey, we're really sorry, but this is going to end up causing a problem. And then, and it's done. But the reality is it's another room. The people who are buying it love it. They're going to use it as a room. I just think it's
as a porch.
Not.
They're going to use it as a porch.
It looks like a room to me, and it looks pretty nice. I mean, it's nice. nice job, but I just don't think it's not a room. And so I have a really hard time not being honest about it. That's my opinion.
I think I agree. It looks nicer than, it looks more like a room than your average screen porch, but I think the question then becomes, where do we draw a line? And if it's uninsulated space that has outlets, there are plenty of uninsulated space in town that have outlets you could put a space heater in, and that sort of doesn't make it a finished room. And so I think in the absence of permanently installed heat, yeah, you could plug something in anywhere, right? But you're allowed to have an outlet in your unfinished basement. You're allowed to have an outlet in your porch. So it's hard to know how we draw that line, I guess.
Yeah. Do we know what the basement consists of?
It is completely unfinished. It's an old fieldstone foundation. You can't see me. I'm 5'6", and I almost hit my head on the ceiling down there. So there's no plumbing, no anything. It's like a fieldstone, bowling alley down there. The only thing that's down there is the boiler, the hot water heater, and a water softener. It is definitely not finishable.
Okay.
It's also not accessible from the house. You get to it through an outside entrance.
Okay, so I think 2 steps. We need to have confirmation of what the door between the mudroom and the porch is like now. Sure. And a deed recording, the language of which we would provide.
Okay.
Just to make sure it gets, otherwise you'll be recording it twice if it doesn't have what we need it to say. So.
Understood. We are assuming that the board votes okay on this. We're supposed to close on the 19th of this month. Would I be able to get that language from the board in order to include that in the closing documents for the buyers?
Ellen, we have a boilerplate, don't we, that they can add the information that this can never be heated. Do we not have that boilerplate, Ellen?
No, not for something like this. I'd have to make it up. But I can do that.
Okay, thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Not heated, and that how we define that, you mentioned fireproof door, the idea being that you're not opening up that door or returning it to just the sliding doors for appearance, which then you could just open and the heat would flow from the rest of the house out into that. So that's a complicated one to write up.
The garage door also, there's air that flows all around that garage door. It is that envelope is not sealed, if you will. It's not a insulated rated garage door, so you're not out there in the wintertime, please.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. So maybe, all right. So would we even want to have that the room can't be insulated sufficiently to be a 4-season room?
Yeah, I think that's a way to approach it, is to just say that this cannot be permanently conditioned space. So not insulated, no permanent heating installed.
Right, then we wouldn't have to specify every little thing. That might be better.
I'll chime in. I think with those conditions, I would feel comfortable.
Conditioned or conditionable space or something. I don't. This is
Diana, how do you feel on this one?
Yeah, if it can't be insulated and we keep the garage door, that's not going to be comfortable in the winter.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, the space looks so nice I mean, it doesn't look like I could drive my car. If furniture removed, it doesn't look like I could drive my car in there anymore.
A car still fits in there.
What kind of flooring do you have there?
It's just it's just a plywood subfloor that I raised up about 6 inches.
All right, so what do we need here?
All right, so our next meeting is not until after the 19th.
Yeah.
Just in terms of finalizing language. So it just makes it hard. There's just not time unless. I don't know what you need for your closing is
if I need to attach something in the deed that you provide me the language, I'm quite confident that will be fine with the buyers.
Right. It's just that puts the pressure on us to do it now because we have to do it in an open meeting. So, I'm not good at writing on the fly. And that's just dangerous because we could miss something that we think about when we have a moment to reflect. Unless do we want to authorize?
That might be, I mean, that might be a way to
two
do
members
it.
of the board to work with Ellen and Mark on language, and I think we've expressed our concerns, and then the details of how that gets written out.
Yeah.
And if it proves really difficult, I don't know what else we'd do.
If it proves difficult, we could, say it has to come back to the board, but I mean, I think we could propose something, just that we propose a deed recording indicating that the third garage bay remain.
You guys hear me still? My phone is about to die.
Yeah, we got you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hello? Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can hear you, I guess. You can't hear us? Oops.
All right. So I guess, do we want to propose some language here, or do we want to authorize Ellen to work with the chair and vice chair on language this week?
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Oh, okay. My phone was my video. I'm like on 0%. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. We're trying to figure out how we move forward on this.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to sort of propose. I'm happy to try to propose a language for deed recording right now, and then Ellen could write it up and send it back, to me or whoever, me and or somebody for approval.
Good. Yes, that sounds good to give it a shot, but give us some wiggle room to reflect on it. Like, did we miss some point?
And so maybe the motion I'll make is to authorize Mark and Ellen to draft a deed recording indicating that the third garage bay remain unconditioned without installation of permanent heating or insulation. Does that seem like a reasonable motion?
Yes.
That sounds good to me. Daryl, were your concerns relative to the door addressed in that language?
That's what I'm trying to figure out, since people get very creative about things like it's not officially insulated. I don't know. I don't know how we can prevent that creativity.
Well, it just gets expensive if you're heating a garage through an open door.
Yeah.
Like at some point, we just have to trust that there's a practicality to it, right? Like.
Yeah, I mean.
I agree with you, Diana.
I mean,
that would be a hard room to heat comfortably, to functionally work as a all year round room through a door.
Without insulation, and you've got that large garage door.
Exactly.
That's not efficient, but
yeah. And so I
mean, we don't know what kind of insulation is on the non-garage door walls, those three walls. Might be insulated, might not be, for sound, if nothing else, or to whatever. So what if we said unconditionable, uninsulated and unconditionable? Would that do it?
That sounds really vague.
Yeah.
I mean, we could just say that it remains unconditioned and the existing garage door remain in place, or the existing garage door not be, I don't know. Like, I mean, it gets into the nitty gritty, right? Like,
Yeah. And then I don't want to have to micromanage to that level.
I think if we just say it remains unconditioned.
Okay. Okay. Maybe that's the best we can do, and that gets drafted. Then if we want to revisit it, do we want to authorize a couple people to, I don't know.
I apologize for the timing. I do. And I appreciate the flexibility you're showing.
I mean, I think in the end, like, we have to realize that we can't write away any possibility. We can't write away someone who just chooses that they don't want to follow the rules. They could choose not to follow the rules, right? Like, there's nothing I can do about that. They can build a wall without a permit, but like, I can't prevent that, right? Like, we do our best.
Right. And I know that other boards have had issues with the way some things have been interpreted, where it was clear that was not the intent of the regulation. And to meetings where planning board or ZBA, whoever, was saying, well, that's not the intent. Yes, it doesn't spell out every detail, and it does get abused sometimes, and that's just unfortunate. But maybe we can't prevent against that without spending our life documenting every little thing. And that's not feasible for us.
And I think sometimes you can get in trouble with over documentation because it clearly says exactly what you want, and then they'd be like, well, they didn't say I couldn't do this.
Yeah, right.
Whereas
So
I think some degree of open-ended is fine. I think the key is that this has to remain unconditioned.
and
And I'm just trying to
unconditioned, unheated, and
I mean, I don't think we need to say unheated and unconditioned, like heating and conditioning.
Okay, unconditioned, uninsulated.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay, so I'll go back and revise. So we're authorizing Ellen to draft a deed recording indicating that the garage bay being used as a screen porch remain unconditioned and uninsulated.
I'd say used as a 3-season only screened porch. About that.
Okay, I think we added the word only.
I added 3-season. I think you just said screened porch.
That could be. All right, that's fine. Does anyone want to make that motion?
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Do we need the word porch, screened porch? Could we say 3-season room?
I think 3-season room sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Does that count as an amendment enough?
I think so. Ellen, do you have an understanding of what we're asking here?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Any more discussion?
No.
Hearing none. Matt Beaver's aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
All right.
Okay.
So, Mr. Schwartz, does that make sense?
Thank you. Yes, it does. And I know that is the spirit in which it was created and the spirit in which they want to use it. So I think the deed recording should hopefully give a comfort level on all fronts. So thank you.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you all. I'm exhausted. We started moving at 7:30 this morning, so thank you.
All right, get some rest.
Take care now.
I believe that was the last item on our agenda. I'm not screen sharing anymore, but I'm looking at the agenda and I do not see anything else. So with that, I think I would move to adjourn.
Seconded.
So moved and
Seconded.
Sounds good. I think I just moved. It's fine. Matt Beaver's on.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Carol Beardsley, aye.
Sounds good. See y'all in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, good night.
Night.